When the world sleeps, the darkness comes alive. Secrets, mysteries, and nightmares lurk just beyond the light. Welcome to Thrillers After Dark. Some tragedies leave scars on the world, and some leave scars on the soul. Edgar Thorne was a man whose life was shattered in an instant, a man whose grief and rage would fester into something monstrous. Years before he became known as the Lantern Killer, Edgar lived quietly on the outskirts of Camp Deadwood with his wife and young daughter. He was meticulous in everything he did, careful and precise, with a love for routine and order. But the world can be cruel to those who only seek peace. One fateful summer, a group of reckless children, visiting the area with their families, stumbled upon Edgar's home. Their curiosity and thoughtless mischief spiraled into horror. They set his house ablaze while laughing and running from the smoke. Edgar's wife and daughter perished in the flames. He tried desperately to save them, but the fire consumed everything, leaving nothing but ash, smoke, and his despair. The children responsible disappeared into the night, and despite investigations, they were never caught. The world moved on, but Edgar did not. He vanished into the surrounding forest, clutching the lantern he had used to try to navigate the smoke, the same lantern that would become his signature. Over time, his grief and rage mutated into obsession. The lantern became a beacon of vengeance, a guide through the darkness, a symbol of the justice the world had denied him. He returned to the ruins of his home in the nearby Lake Deadwood Lake, and from that day on, anyone who dared to tread there would face the wrath of the Lantern Killer. Decades later, a group of 5 friends arrived at Camp Deadwood, eager for a weekend of escape and laughter. The cabins, long abandoned and weather-worn, appeared welcoming in the moonlight, but something in the air was wrong, unnatural, heavy, and watchful. As night fell, the stillness of the forest and the quiet lapping of the lake seemed almost to hold its breath. On the first night, Jenna noticed a flickering light near her cabin window. She thought it might be a reflection from a lantern in another part of the camp, but then came the scratching, soft but deliberate. Her heart raced as she realized someone or something was outside. The light bobbed closer, steady, calm, and unhurried. It was him, the Lantern Killer, moving with terrifying precision, his old hunting knife glinting faintly in the lantern's glow. Mark went to fetch water from the mess hall. Through the trees, he glimpsed the lantern swaying unnaturally. Suddenly, Edgar emerged, silent and deliberate, knife in hand. The first strike grazed Mark's shoulder, a shallow wound, but the terror was immeasurable. He fled blindly through the forest, the lantern light following, stalking him like a heartbeat in the dark. Emily and Sarah tried to find each other near the broken dock, hoping to regroup. The sound of creaking wood and distant whispering filled the air. The Lantern Killer emerged again, knife poised, moving without haste. He didn't need to rush. He thrived on the suspense, letting fear coil in the hearts of his victims before striking. Emily felt the cold edge of the knife graze her arm, a thin line of blood that sent a shiver through her entire body. Each encounter was precise and terrifying. Edgar did not kill in blind rage. He was deliberate. He would corner his victims, let them hide, watch their panic, whisper their names softly with his voice almost drowned by the rustling leaves and the gentle waves of Deadwood Lake. He wanted them to feel the terror he had felt, the helplessness of seeing everything you love consumed by flames and injustice. The forest and cabins themselves seemed complicit in the terror. The broken planks creaked, the wind whispered through the trees like voices of the past, and every shadow could be him. Flashbacks revealed the origin of his rage moments of helplessness. As the fire consumed his family, the children responsible laughing in the background, and the world turning a blind eye. This unpunished crime fueled his vengeance. Every visitor to Deadwood Lake was a reminder of what the world had failed to stop. As night wore on, the killings became more methodical. Near the mess hall, a friend tripped over roots and fallen branches. The knife grazed their leg, a precise strike meant to wound and terrify. On the dock, another friend felt the cold edge of metal at their back, a shallow cut that burned and bled, leaving them panicked and desperate. The Lantern Killer's attacks were never gratuitous. They were meant to heighten fear, to torment, to remind his victims of his careful, unyielding presence. Slowly, the group thinned. Each encounter tested their courage and sanity. They saw the lantern flicker at the edge of the trees, heard soft whispers calling their names, and glimpsed movements too quick and silent to follow. Fear grew heavy, pressing on their chests, suffocating and relentless. Every step, Every heartbeat felt like a trap. Emily, the last survivor, reached the edge of Deadwood Lake at dawn. She was bleeding, exhausted, trembling. Across the lake, the lantern glowed, reflected in the still water like a heartbeat of vengeance. The lantern killer emerged at the shoreline, knife poised and steady, his eyes carrying the weight of decades of grief and rage. She froze, realizing the depth of his torment. The children who had destroyed his life were never caught, and he had waited all these years to make the world remember. Emily ran across the broken dock, the wood groaning under her weight. Edgar lunged, knife raised. She dove into the lake, thrashing, the cold water burning against her skin. The lantern swayed on the shore, then slowly faded into the woods, leaving her alone. The forest returned to silence, but the terror lingered. The lantern killer remained, hidden, patient, still waiting, and still guided by the flickering light of his vengeance. Deadwood Lake would never be safe. Its waters, its cabins, its shadows carried the memory of a man wronged. A man whose rage had no end, and a story that would haunt anyone foolish enough to wander into his territory.